Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin B., your host and a child of an all-powerful and perfectly loving God, and an addict living in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. Rico 12 is an open to all addictions and afflictions organization dedicated to exploring the common threads of the differing manifestations of alcoholism. We share tools and offer hope, and from those walking a similar path, and we gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and locations. As those who are here live can see, there are people from all over the world here in this meeting, and we're grateful to have you here. Our speakers come from various fellowships and experiences demonstrating the universal principles of recovery. Rico 12 is not allied or affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. This is Rico 12 meeting number 357. Thank you for joining us live or on the recording later. Today's speaker is Carriss D. She has spoken on Rico 12 one time previously with her husband Matt on meeting number 285, and I'm so grateful and excited to have her back. She'll be speaking today on the topic entitled Tools of the Program, and I look forward to hearing more about this message in just a few minutes. But first, a few quick announcements. Rico 12 offers a variety of recovery resources, including other podcasts and social media communities. To explore more, visit rico12.com. That's RECO12.com, or check the chat and show notes for links. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue this message. Thank you to all our Spearhead donors, past and present, especially this last week to Catherine, Ferdinand, Jesse, and Sarah. Your support truly makes a difference. If you'd like to contribute, visit rico12.com/support, or check the links that I'll put in the chat and in the show notes of the podcast for one-time or monthly donation options. Every bit of support, financial, and especially through word of mouth. Share this message with others who you feel would benefit from it. It really helps us share these messages of recovery. Each week, we receive light and inspiration from our speakers. Their experience brings hope, meaning, worth, and growth to us as listeners. Now, I'll welcome today's guest speaker, Carriss D., and just share a little bit about her as I introduce her here before she comes on to share her experience, strength, and hope. When Carriss joined SA, she came in with an expectation that she would quickly work the program, finish the steps, get her certificate of completion, and then her husband would be happy and all would be well. Carriss found out pretty quickly that the program doesn't quite work that way. She also found out that she wasn't fully honest, open, or willing yet because she ended up having a relapse. It was that relapse that made her realize that if she didn't get to work, nothing would change. The tools of the program are the solution. They are the actions that Carriss has taken in recovery that have kept her sober one day at a time for over 3.5 years. And Carriss, take it away. The floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me. And as you mentioned, so the topic is tools of the program. But before I dive into the various tools of the SA program, I want to share a little bit about my background. So for much of my life, I felt incomplete, inadequate, and unworthy. I was searching for something to fill the void and make me feel whole, make me feel important. And my search manifested as sexual acting out. I was looking for companionship in unsafe and connections in unsafe situations. And at the age of 25, I got married and I thought my search was over, but I still felt incomplete. What I didn't know was that this continued search was for unmet needs I didn't realize that I had, those of connection and acceptance. And my husband was incapable of providing those needs for me at the time. So for 15 years of my marriage, I acted out with multiple people, still searching. And it wasn't until I began working the steps in SA that I realized that I was missing, what I was missing was a deeper connection with my higher power, whom I call God, as well as a real connection with people. But I didn't find SA on my own. This was something my husband was really happy to provide for me. He's the one that reviewed my past at length and without my permission, and then determined that I might have an addiction, and therefore he recommended that I join SA. So after dragging my feet for a bit, I came to this program in August the 22nd, 2021. And I didn't do it for me, but I did it for him, essentially to get him off my back. But I stayed in this program because I realized that I belonged, I was accepted, and I was making the real connection, true intimate relationships with others and God. And I achieve this by using the tools of the program. And one of those tools is prayer. Prayer is something that's been easy for me to accept, but it's been hard for me to implement consistently in my routine. But I have found that if I want a better morning, to talk with God first, and for a better night, I should talk with God last. And for a better life, I should talk with God all day. And prayer is just, for me, it's just quiet time with my higher power, nothing spectacular, just me talking to him, listening for his guidance. And I can say something as simple as thank you or help me or tell me what to do. But before recovery, I used to only think of praying in times of distress, or I would turn to prayer as a last ditch effort to gain some control over a difficult situation. I was simply using God as a request line. But the truth of the matter is, if I pray according to his will, then I will receive it. It's just that simple for me. And in step 3, we make a decision to turn the will and the care of our lives over to God as we understood him. And in prayer, his will is important. And we seek his will through the relationship we build through prayer. And one thing I've been doing while talking to God is praying for those I have resentments against, using the prayer out of the big book on page 552, which reads, if you have a resentment, you want to be free of it. If you will pray for the person or the thing you resent, you will be free. If you ask in prayer for everything you want for yourself to be given to them, you will be free. Ask for their health, their prosperity, their happiness, and you will be free. Even when you don't really want it for them and your prayers are only words and you don't mean it, go ahead and do it anyway. Do it every day for 2 weeks and you will find you have come to mean it and want it for them. And you will realize that where you used to feel bitterness and resentment and hatred, you now feel compassionate, understanding, and love. So I did this for about 2 weeks because I had a resentment for my mother, or towards my mother, for events that happened in my childhood. I was molested by her boyfriend from the ages of 6 to 14. And when I told her what was happening to me, I expected her to save me, but she didn't. And that left me feeling abandoned and alone. And I was holding on to that resentment for many, many years. I felt anger and bitterness and pain because of her lack of concern. And I placed that entire burden on her, which made our relationship really complicated. Sometimes I would just think of those moments and be so angry that I wouldn't speak to my mom for months at a time. And for years, I couldn't even bring myself to make amends to her for any of my negative behaviors because I was harboring this deep resentment towards her. I didn't want to forgive her, and I didn't care if she forgave me. But my sponsor pointed out the pain that I was causing myself by not letting go. Forgiving my mom didn't mean that she was being let off the hook and everything was okay. It simply meant that I was accepting the events of the past, letting go of judgment, and surrendering them to God. So I began to pray for my mom, using the prayer from the big book. The first few days were just words. I simply took the action of prayer. But around the 12th day, things changed, and I began to feel compassion when I had once felt bitterness. My attitude was changing, and my heart was softening. That's the power of prayer. So today, I'm not holding on to the pain of the past. Today, I can talk to my mom without anger. Our relationship isn't perfect, and there's still some work to be done, but because of my actions, we have a relationship. I am so grateful that this program is a program of action, because if I hadn't taken the action of prayer, nothing would have changed. And today, I choose to forgive her. And through my practice of prayer, I'm able to forgive my mom and many other people in my life. And I use forgiveness as a tool for personal growth and healing. Forgiveness takes time, and it's not always easy. It involves releasing feelings of anger, bitterness, and resentment. Forgiveness doesn't mean you're automatically restoring a relationship with the person who caused you harm, but it can help pave the way for restoration. It doesn't mean that you condone the behavior or forget what happened. It's primarily a way to heal and find peace for those who choose to forgive. Forgiveness offers release from the burden of resentment. Surrendering resentments and forgiving the wrongs of others is a step towards growth and change. And in the essay book, Step into Action, on page 120, it says, if we don't forgive, we're never free. Unless we forgive, we're not forgiven. So I choose to forgive. I also choose to forgive because in my faith tradition, it says that those who have been forgiven should also forgive others and reflect God's mercy. And in the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us." And who am I to not forgive others when God's already forgiven them? But forgiveness is a process, not an event. And this process sometimes has to happen over and over again. I've forgiven my mother multiple times for the events of my childhood, and I'll likely have to forgive her again in the future. But forgiveness can also extend to oneself for mistakes or harm that you've caused. And I've learned to forgive myself by using step 10. For almost 3 years, I did a nightly step 10 inventory and journaled about my day. And this time of self-reflection taught me a lot about myself. I learned that I was truly a good person. I learned that God loves me. I learned that I am now honest and faithful and worthy of forgiveness. And most importantly, I understand that I'm not a bad person trying to be good, but a sick person trying to heal and become well. I also learned about self-forgiveness through working with sponsees. I've sponsored a handful of women over the years, and through my work with them, I've seen how they can be hard on themselves for mistakes in their past. And through conversation, I've oftentimes realized that I was doing the same thing to myself. If I believe that they are worthy of forgiveness, then why not me? The words that I have said to a sponsee are often words that I then turn around and say to myself, Carriss, you are a worthy, loved child of God. You deserve to receive forgiveness for your past discretions. You've been making living amends by living a better life, and it's okay to forgive yourself. Show yourself the same kindness and compassion that you would show to others, and show yourself the same love that God shows you. Self-forgiveness is an incredible thing that I've achieved with the help of my higher power. And I want to share a couple of other remarkable things that God has done in my life. So I recently had some conflict in my home because my 19-year-old son came back from college. And he was basically enjoying all the freedoms of being an adult without having any of the responsibilities. My husband and I talked and decided we needed to have a conversation about him moving out. I was given numerous opportunities to lead this conversation, but when it came time to have that conversation, I was fearful of being part of the conflict. So I withdrew and I shut down, and that left my husband alone to discuss the topic of moving out with our son. The conversation didn't end well, and my son not only moved out that night, but he blocked our numbers so we couldn't contact him. I didn't realize what I had done until my husband and I talked about it. And I was actually really surprised that I had the ability to still use the defective withdrawal. This was something that I used to do in the past. I used to withdraw and isolate and shut down. So I made amends to my husband for doing this. And then I decided to use another tool to help me with this. I turned to God. God's a tool for me. And I know that might sound a little weird. It did to me at first, but a program friend recently shared with me something she learned about and implemented in her life. And it's something called a God box. And I wasn't initially sure if I thought this was a great idea or a strange or silly idea, but I've decided it's a great idea. So I use this physical tool of a God box to surrender resentments, fears, defects, or just to connect with my higher power. So with the defective withdrawal, I wrote it down on a piece of paper with a short prayer, and I physically placed it in my God box. That physical action of surrender is part of the solution for me. My God box is the tangible thing that bridges the gap between my intangible higher power and me, a physical being. And it helps me express my feelings and needs. And it's just another physical form of surrender. So a few days after my son left home and I had realized he blocked me, I surrendered the future of my relationship with my son because it was something I had no control over. I added it to my God box, and then I just broke down. I cried for like 20 minutes like I'd never cried before. But less than 10 minutes later, I saw the awesome power of God. My son showed up at my house. I was shocked and overwhelmed with happiness when I saw him, and I hugged him for so long that I began to cry again. Then another amazing and unexpected thing happened. We just sat and talked things out. We talked about everything that had happened for about an hour or so. And I was open and honest about my withdrawn behavior. And I made amends to my son for my part in making him feel alone. And my honesty was met with love and appreciation. And I found as long as we can be honest, even a little bit, we can move forward in our recovery. That's something that was very difficult for me when I entered the program because I had so much fear around my secrets. But in SA, I've learned that I have to not just be honest, but rigorously honest with myself, with others, and with God. So when I began working on my first step, I also began writing an unabridged disclosure statement for my husband. And it was through writing these that I finally began to be honest with myself, and then with God and my sponsor, and finally with my husband. That was the beginning of rigorous honesty for me and the beginning of a new life. When I delivered my first step in a meeting and my disclosure to my husband, what I received was acceptance and freedom. My program family accepted me, warts and all, and I now had freedom from the secrets. I had freedom to be honest and freedom from fear. I was no longer afraid of being found out because with the help of my higher power, I had let it all go. This was the beginning of a new relationship with my husband. In my eyes, I had a clean slate, a fresh start, to be honest with him moving forward. But it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be because we had some difficulties communicating with one another. So we practiced. We practiced having honest conversations with each other. We practiced conversations about easy things. We practiced about hard things. And it seems a little silly now, but that practice has really, really helped us. We practice using I statements rather than you statements. And we use I statements, not you statements, because you statements can hold judgment and criticism. So we never say things to each other like, you should have done this or you could have done that. And one of the tools that we use to practice this healthy communication is called PHANOS. It's an acronym derived from the Greek word meaning enlighten or spotlight, and that's what the check-in is designed to do. So PHANOS stands for feelings, affirmations, needs, ownership, struggles. So each person is supposed to share uninterrupted about each of those things, and the other partner just listens. And it's really important that in the beginning, not to give feedback and just simply listen. I can't tell you how many times before recovery that my husband would be talking to me. And while I thought I was doing a good job listening, I was actually just spending time thinking about what I wanted to say next. Anyway, so PHANOS, feelings. You share with your spouse a feeling that you have. And it's important to state how you feel and not what you're thinking. So saying, I feel that you, or I feel that this is not really a feeling, but it's a thought. So you should say something more like, I feel discouraged or I feel anxious. I actually purchased a couple of feeling wheels for myself and my husband to help us with identifying our feelings. I did not realize until we did this how hard it was to identify and understand how I was actually feeling until we started doing this. So the F stands for feelings, and the A stands for affirmation. You affirm your spouse for something that they have done. N is for need. You state a need that you have today, and it doesn't have to be one that your spouse needs to meet. Then ownership, you take responsibility and apologize for something you've done or said. And this may not come up, there may not be anything. And then struggle, that's the last one. Here you have an opportunity to tell your partner like the status of your struggles, whether it's spiritually or with recovery or work or with sobriety, whatever it may be. But if you're sharing these things with your spouse, it's also important you can be specific, but you shouldn't be graphic because your spouse is not your accountability partner or your sponsor. But speaking of those, this is a really good check-in to do with an accountability partner or sponsor or just anybody in program. My husband and I used this tool for a bit, but over time we adapted this model into something a little less specific. We used that shovel, that tool, to dig the trench, and when we were done digging the trench, we didn't need the shovel anymore. So we do continue to practice listening to each other and practice how we talk to each other. And we eventually got to the point where feedback was added in, and that leads naturally to conversation. And so although we don't use this tool anymore, there are still other program tools that we do use, like Think, for example, which stands for true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind. And we've learned to use many healthy communication tools in our everyday life. And because of that, we now naturally speak to one another respectfully, and we share our feelings honestly and listen attentively to one another. Before recovery, we used to have heavy conversations late at night after a long day of work, and those conversations would quickly turn into chaotic arguments filled with screaming and yelling. The result of trying to have a deep conversation late at night was never, ever good. But now that we're in recovery, we both stop and assess our level of halts, which is hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I add 2 S's, sick or stressed. So if we're experiencing any of those things, we simply share that with the other person. And there's an understanding there now that, okay, we're going to put this conversation on hold. This is not the time. And we even use it for little things, like planning the day out. Maybe someone's too tired to talk about that. So we've learned that we need to take care of our own personal needs before we can be any good to the other person. So we just hit the pause button. And I think the best thing that we've learned so far in recovery is just being able to state our needs to one another and not be upset or disappointed if the other person says that they can't meet those needs right now. Today, I can hear the statement, I can't meet your needs right now, and I don't flip my lid, I don't feel like acting out, and I don't lose my emotional sobriety. But there is something that used to endanger my emotional sobriety in the past. That was expectations and assumptions. Early in recovery, I was told not to have any expectations or assumptions. The reason being is that assumptions and expectations can be dangerous if an addict like myself assumes and expects and also communicates nothing to the person or people involved, and then those expectations aren't met. Then this can quickly turn into resentments, which can endanger emotional and physical sobriety, which can lead to relapses. So no expectations and no assumptions is just good relapse prevention, especially early in recovery. But I've learned over time to manage my expectations. It's okay to make assumptions or have expectations in certain situations. A married person can assume and expect that their spouse will remain faithful to them. But what do we do when this expectation is not met? How do we respond? Are we bitter, resentful, angry? Do we lose our physical and emotional sobriety by acting out? When we do these things, it's not the unmet expectation that's the problem. It's our reaction or our response to the unmet expectation that's the problem. The problem's within us. So I've learned through trial and error to manage my expectations so that I don't become angry, bitter, resentful, and act out and lose my sobriety. There was a little bit of a miscommunication between my husband and I some time ago about spending time together. And I heard him say that he needed 15 minutes. So I assumed that meant in 15 minutes we would hang out with each other. So I came back 15 minutes and I'm all eager and ready to go. I'm like, hey, let's hang out. And he's like, no, I can't do this right now. I'm doing a thing. And I'm like, but you said you'd be ready in 15 minutes. And he's like, I didn't say that. I said that I would consider it in 15 minutes. Anyways, I was really frustrated by this. And so my next sentence, of course, was another big you statement. And he interrupted me and pointed out what I was doing. which meant he was also making a you statement. So I pointed it out kindly, sort of kindly. And at some point, we realized that the conversation was not moving forward anymore. And it was just kind of silly. So we hit the pause button and we started over. Eventually, we were able to laugh about this and just laugh at ourselves because it was kind of ridiculous. But I also learned that I cannot assume that anyone will meet my needs or expectations, especially if I fail to clearly communicate what my needs are. So the question is, how do you point out that someone is making a you statement without making a you statement? This is something my husband and I had to practice a lot, and we still kind of take it slowly when we're doing this, but it's kind of like, it sounds like what I hear you saying is that you feel blah, blah, blah because I did yada, yada. And in the future, I will try to do ABC and would appreciate it if you would do XYZ. And so reframing that makes a difference in how it's received because you don't feel like you're being accused of something because someone's not pointing the pointy end of the stick at you. But I'm so grateful today that this practice has paid off and we can discuss a miscommunication and laughter is involved. There's no shaming, there's no blaming, screaming, or yelling. We just talk things out and we've been able to communicate our needs to one another in a way that we never could before. It's a completely new marriage and it's progress, not perfection. It's really awesome to see the progress that we've both made individually and together. And through this program, I've learned to utilize the tools at my disposal to enhance my recovery journey. And my tools have helped me stay sober since my relapse in 2021. And I'm not sober today because I use my tools perfectly. I'm sober today because I use my tools. Thank you for letting me share.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Rico 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you so much, Carriss, for running through the tools of the program. I love that. And I love that closing remark. It's because I use my tools. It's not because I use them perfectly. Thank you for doing that. I've received a couple of questions from our live audience, and a reminder to our live audience, if you have a question for Carriss, please type it in the chat. If you would like to remain anonymous, you can direct message it to me or just type anonymous at the beginning of your question, and I won't read your first name. Otherwise, I'll read your first name as I ask those questions. I'm going to start off with an anonymous question here for you. Can you please explain what you meant in terms of writing a disclosure statement? What does that mean in your fellowship, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So I did this with the help of a CSAT, which is a certified sex addiction counselor or therapist. But it's very similar to a step one. So it's, I informed my spouse of all of the things that went on leading up to our relationship and leading up to my time in the program and things that went on during our relationship. And then also included what I was doing to make changes. So it's just, comprehensive detail of this is what my life looked like and how I got here. And for me, it was kind of like, I want to assure you that there's nothing that you did wrong. This is something that was manifesting long before we even knew each other. And so that's why it was important for me to include like some background of my life in there and then share the rest of what happened during our relationship, things that he already knew and things that he didn't know. And I wanted to get it all out there and lay out all the dirty secrets so that I didn't have anything to hide anymore.
Is that something that was super scary for you? I mean, sometimes in program in step 9, it says, we make amends to everybody, direct amends, unless it's going to cause harm to them or others. Is that something that you have to look at in this process, or is doing a disclosure statement or a step 1 inventory, whatever it would be called at that point, different than that?
It's a little bit different. But yeah, it was definitely a scary process. And it's going to sound weird to say, but I was kind of lucky that my husband was like such a good S&on. He was really a snooper. And so he knew a lot of things. And so the things that I wrote down, pretty much he already knew what they were. So it wasn't, and I didn't go into detail. It was just, here's an event that I was misbehaving, I guess. And yeah, I think it was easy for me because he knew a lot of my history already. So for someone who's doing that and their spouse doesn't know a lot of those things already, I think it would be a little bit more terrifying. And you have to balance out what you're saying and how you're saying it to make sure that you don't cause harm to that other person.
Yeah, thank you for walking through that. And I agree that when both members of a couple are working their program and working it well and everything, it makes for a better experience in that situation. So thank you for sharing that. Next question comes from Dan. Dan says, "How do you use the tools of humility in your program?"
Thanks, Dan. That's a good question. Actually read step 7 in a meeting this morning. So just for me, one of the things that's really humbling for me, and it was when I had the conversation with my son, is like realizing that I used a defect that I really didn't think I had anymore in that example. And then now I've got to make things right. Now I need to not just share it with my higher power, but I have to share it with a person that can accept or reject me. And I've got to humble myself and do the right thing. And so that was something that was a little bit difficult for me, but I found that um, I have been able to humble myself in situations and do the right thing. And that's been the best thing for me because it just works out better that way when I'm seeking God's will. I hope
Beautiful.
that answered your question.
I, Good stuff. I appreciate it. Have another anonymous question that came in here, Karis. Karis, have you prayed the prayer on page 552 of the Big Book for anyone besides your mother? If so, how did that go?
Um, I have. I had to think about that. I have, and it has gone really well. It was somebody that I don't even know really why I had this resentment, but it was really gnawing at me. And I'm like, I don't know what it is. And so I started praying that prayer for this person. And I don't think I did it for a full 2 weeks. It maybe was 5 or 6 days, and it just kind of changed my attitude towards them. And this was after I had done that for my mom. And so maybe at that time I didn't end up needing to do the full 2 weeks because I had already, I don't know, gone through that process before. Um, why it worked faster the second time, I don't know. But yeah, I have prayed that prayer for other people, and it's gone well.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Kara. So, um, and it sounds like you may not have experienced strength and hope on this next question that I have for you. What if I've prayed that prayer for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 months, a year, and I still experience resentment and have harbor negative feelings towards that other person? Do you have any thoughts on that? If the 2 weeks doesn't seem to be long enough for me in that
I
situation?
I do because I tried praying for my mom many times before, forgiving my mom many times before, using other prayers, just praying whatever was on my heart, and it just it just kept being there. And I thought, okay, well, I've forgiven her, it's fine. And then that resentment would come back up. And so it took me, it might have taken over a year to get to the point where it finally felt resolved somehow. Um, and I just say, don't give up until the miracle happens or before the miracle happens.
Yeah, don't give up until the miracle. I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's my experience too. Is if it's just not clearing out, I need to continue to be willing to do it. Well, at least one more time, every time, until I find peace and serenity. All right. I have another anonymous question from our live audience. This person says, "Can you talk more about expectations in relationships while being in recovery? The big book says my serenity is inversely proportional to my expectations. The higher my expectations of the other people are, the lower my serenity. What does this mean in relationships, even married ones? How do I deal with that?"
So I found in my relationship that when I do have expectations or I assume that my husband's going to do something or whatever, um, and he doesn't, then I have to be like, well, did he know? Because he obviously can't read my mind. Like, did he know that I expected this from him, or I assumed that he was going to do that? And so we'll have a conversation about it. But there are certain things that I can assume that he's going to do. Like I can assume he's going to load the dishwasher after I unload it because past history has shown me that's what happens. I unload the dishwasher, he loads the dishwasher. So I can have that assumption and expectation, and if he doesn't do it, I still don't get bent out of shape. I'm just like, okay, he just didn't do it today. But that's taken a lot of practice too, is to, if those little bitty things, those little expectations I have aren't met, to not be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But for me, that's where the program slogan, how important is it, comes into play. And something like that, it's not really important. And so I have to use that one a lot to calm myself down and say, and in the scope of things, this is probably not that important. And if I really need this thing to be done, I need to have a conversation about it.
I love that question to ask yourself. How important is this really? Talk to us a little bit more about that process, and when you come to the realization that you need to ask that question. Really, how important is this? Is it worth getting bent out of shape about?
Probably right about that point where I'm starting to get upset about something. Then it's like, wait a minute, okay. Because I'm not an angry person. And so if I'm getting angry, I'm like, something is pushing me there, or I've let something fester and I need to figure out what that is. And so, especially in moments where it's like, I go from happy to like, now I'm really upset. Okay, what was it? Oh, it was that. Oh, he didn't take the trash out today. Is it really important that he didn't take the trash out? I could just take the trash out. That's not a big deal. Like just always, I guess, checking my own motivations and doing a quick self-reflection.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for walking through that. That's such a powerful tool and something that I need to practice on a lot better. Is just stepping back and saying, is this really that important? Is this something that I can't just take, 2 minutes and take care of? Or am I so proud that I'm not going to do that for this other person? Good. So I have another question come in from Jesse in our live audience. Jesse says, Carriss, these tools, especially the Phanos tool you mentioned, are they available in writing, perhaps with a guide? Are you aware of anywhere that you can get these types of things in writing somewhere?
Um, I got the Phanos tool, I think, from my sponsor, and she sent it to me. So, Jesse, I could probably find that and send it to you.
Yeah, so if you find that, and you can send it directly to Jesse if you have Jesse's stuff, or if anybody else out there wants access to this Phanos tool, if you could email it to me also. And if they email
Absolutely.
me at rico12pod@gmail.com, I can get it sent to them, and I'll put that email in the chat and in the show notes. So if anybody wants that, they can get that. Um, I have another question for you that I wrote down here. You talked about two different tools. Well, you talked about several different tools, but one of them was prayer and another one was turning to God. How are prayer and turning to God different in your toolbox? What does that look like as a difference there?
Um, so I mean, of course they're intertwined, but I think because I've started practicing just talking to God throughout the day, um, it's like I'm building this relationship and I just have a conversation, an ongoing conversation. And when I'm struggling or sad or stuck or anxious, you know, it's more of a direct, hey, I need you right now. And I think that's the difference for me between just prayer and conversation and turning to God.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you for walking through that. So let me see. Yes. So I reached out to Matt just a little bit earlier in this conversation, and he's on board if you are. Would you and him be willing to do a practice Fanos together on this and record that for us? Is that something you would be open to doing?
Sure, hon.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to step back and let you two talk about a situation and then do this Fanos and see what it looks like.
So, Carriss, I've had a few minutes to think about this because he asked me a few minutes ago. So I would like to just kind of back up to the Xander situation when I asked him to move out and kind of share for the audience what I was going through with that and take it letter by letter and work through all of that, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
And then you can do whatever you want after that. So the F is for feelings. So share an emotion that you experienced on that day with regard to the Xander situation. I was frustrated when you opted out of the conversation with Xander. I was scared to have the conversation by myself. I was sad when Xander left the way that he did. And I felt like the bad guy after all of it. Affirmations, express appreciation for something the partner did. I did, however, appreciate you standing united with me in the decision to ask him to move out. Need, state a personal need, not necessarily to be met by the partner. In this case, it is a need to be met by Carriss, and I would say that I need you to have tough conversations with me and Xander moving forward. And ownership. Take responsibility for a mistake or apologize. So I recognize that when I was ready to make this decision, I pressed immediately forward, and that caused you emotional pressure. And then struggles or sobriety, that's the S. Discuss personal struggles or progress, often related to recovery goals. And in this case, I would say I would prefer, as the result of this whole Xander scenario, I would prefer if you leave me out of the family narrative that results from all of this. I need to maintain my emotional sobriety, and I may not be able to if I'm listening to everybody's comments.
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for listening.
Do you want feedback or should I just give you my side?
Well, we're not supposed to do feedback immediately after Fanos, so just your side.
Okay. Well, I will start with sharing my feelings. I felt uncomfortable and scared and anxious about that whole situation because I didn't know how it would go. I thought that it wouldn't go well. And I was worried about my appearance and how I was going to look. And I just felt really, really nervous. And let's see, affirmation. I really appreciate that you stood by and gave me support, even though I wasn't able to support you in that conversation. And I appreciate you saying that you are sorry for pressuring me into that situation. A need that I have, I also need to be able to have the tough conversations with you. And I need reminders sometimes to do that. And let's see, ownership. I want to apologize for leaving you on your own, for stepping out of that conversation when I had the ability to have become a part of that and been unified with you during that conversation. And let's see, struggles. During that time, I think I was really just struggling with my anxiety. And I think that it's something that I need to continue to work on. But I appreciate you being able to hear that from me. And that's all I got.
Thanks for sharing, dear. I love you.
I love you too.
Thank you both for being willing to do that. How powerful is that, and how vulnerable? This is something that is typically done one-on-one, and here we have 25 people that you did this in front of live, and however many people listen recorded. Thank you for being willing to be vulnerable in that in doing this. Have a comment that came in from Jacqueline. I love that you were able to show how this works. Thank you both for being such great examples of how the program works if you work it. Love you guys. So, man, thank you both for being willing to do that. All right. I have another question for you, Carriss. You talked about early on in this conversation about, it's actually one of the first things you shared. You were seeking the solution, seeking to fill the hole in your soul that was there any way possible, and it just wasn't able to happen. Talk to us a little bit more about that emptiness and the futility of seeking it in other people and other things rather than in where the solution really is.
Yeah. I don't know when exactly that started, but I'll say probably in my teenage years. Just looking for acceptance. I always felt like I didn't really fit in. Um, and so that was the first thing, was looking for acceptance and looking for love that I wasn't getting at home. And just that longing to connect with other people. And I didn't know how to do that. I didn't have healthy models of, what a healthy relationship looked like, whether it be friendship or a romantic relationship. And so all of the relationships that I was building were shallow. And, I wasn't my authentic self because I was whomever I thought I should be to please other people. And so the search continued, right? If they decided they didn't think I was good enough, then I'm like, okay, well, let me find somebody else who maybe will accept me for me as this person. And that didn't work. It was just endless searching. And I didn't know that I was doing that endless searching and that it would never have an end if I hadn't have found program.
Mm.
And that allowed me to hold up that mirror to myself, and see who I was and what I was really doing.
Yeah. So, Carriss, you said something very interesting there to me that I'd like to dive on for just a minute. You said, I needed to find somebody who would accept me for who, and you paused, who I thought I was at this time, for this person. In that moment, were you thinking someone who would accept me for who I am today? And what does that evolution look like of who you see yourself as now as opposed to then?
I think the difference is that before recovery, I didn't always want to be me. I didn't like the person that I was. I liked the person that people thought that I was. And I knew that there was this other part of me that's completely different from what other people saw on the outside. And so, how could anybody love that person altogether, that whole person? And what recovery has shown me is that I can be loved and accepted just as I am. And I don't have to do anything but be my authentic self.
Hey, Rico 12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Rico 12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at rico12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Rico 12 Spearhead. And how do you find acceptance for your authentic self? I mean, as I look at my own life, I still will say, man, if and a lot of people know me, they've heard my story. A lot of people know me for who I am, but there are a lot of people that it's none of their business, And I think, man, if you knew what I did in my past, you wouldn't accept me. How do you get to that point where you're comfortable, even around people that it's none of their business to know my life and my business?
I think that change came with just the change in how I feel about myself overall. And now I know that, like I was saying earlier, I'm an honest, loved person. I'm worthy of love. And I think number one is that honesty. Like, I know that I'm not hiding anything, and I am always going to say what I mean and mean what I say. And that's the same with program friends and family, or those people that don't need to know about my program stuff. I'm still going to be honest and truthful with those people about the things that we discuss.
Yeah, and you mentioned, in fact, the phrase you said, I think, is, my honesty is met with love and appreciation from others rather than judgment. Is that typically your experience? Is that people don't seem to judge you as much when you're honest as they just love and appreciate you?
Yeah, I think I've been really lucky that has been my experience thus far. Um, and I think it also has to do with the fact that the people that I surround myself with have also changed over time.
I love that. You are who you roll with. Those who and as you roll into higher planes, higher planed people roll along with you. That's such a powerful concept. Are there any other things, words of wisdom that you'd like to share with us as we get ready to close this out?
Just keep practicing. Practice the steps, practice the tools of the program, practice having healthy conversations. Just keep practicing, and it'll eventually become part of your life.
Mm. And and I actually have one more question based on what you just shared there. You talked about, practicing these deep conversations. And I think you said something, at least this is what I heard. Don't have deep conversations late at night when you're both tired. Put that off for another time. How do you be satisfied if, say, Matt, you want to have a conversation? He says, tonight is not good. Let's put this off. How are you satisfied with that answer and able to have peace enough to sleep through the night in that situation?
That's hard. It's hard to do. But I've learned to be patient with that. And sometimes it is, I'm really anxious and I'm like, I want to talk about this like right now. And he can't do it. And I'm like, okay, I said I was going to be understanding. So that's what I'm going to do. Gonna wait and be patient and just, and go do something else. I usually have to like take my mind off of it, call another friend and talk things out if that's, an appropriate time to do so. But just learning to continue to give that respect to him has been good practice for me.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I will be practicing on several of these things that you've brought up. Thank you for presenting tools of the program, Carriss. This was a fantastic speaker meeting, and just grateful for your willingness to share. And Matt, for your willingness to come on and practice that Phanos with her and give us that example. If anybody out here still has questions, please consider joining our WhatsApp group. I put that link in the chat, and you can join that, ask the questions in there, and our community can answer those questions and share our own experience, strength, and hope. If you haven't done so yet out there in the listening audience, please consider rating and reviewing this podcast, the RICO 12 Speaker Meeting Podcast, on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you listen. It's a powerful way to work Step 12 and share recovery with others. Next Friday, we'll be back at the same time on the same link, and we will be hearing from Candace B., a first-time RICO 12 speaker. Her topic will be The Gift Wrapped in Pain, My Recovery with a God Who Never Let Go. And I'm really excited to hear her experience, strength, and hope on that, and I look forward to that. Stay updated via WhatsApp. Join our email list. You can do that by going to RICO12, RICO12.com/join us and get in on that, and we'll get you all of the information out weekly so that you'll never have to miss another meeting. So let's wrap this up. Carriss, you said you'd like to do the submission prayer and close us out with that. If you're willing to take us out with the submission prayer, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, of course. I'll just take a moment of silence and breathe. Okay, prayer. I'm going to do the we version. Higher power, we give this day to you. Establish the work of our hands, the steps of our feet, the words from our mouths, the direction of our gaze, the thoughts of our minds, and the attitudes of our heart. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Carriss. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
It ain't about the body, it ain't about the skin. It's the lie that whisper you'll be whole if you give in. It's the high before the hollow, the click before the fall. It's the ache that never satisfies no matter what you saw. They told me it was natural, just boys being boys, but I was choking down poison dressed up like a choice, and now I'm calling it by name. No more hiding in the fog. It ain't just porn I'm fighting, it's the God I made of want. Porn of problem, lust is the thief, selling us heaven and leaving us grief. I wanted to love, but I learned how to crave. Now I'm digging through ashes and calling it brave. She ain't an object and I ain't a king. Porn is the problem, not just a thing. And what about her? Yeah, the other side. The girl who learned early she was worth what she supplied. She didn't want to be seen, she wanted to be wanted. Now she's starved for attention and Instagram haunted. It's the hunger to be lusted, mistaken for love. And both sides end up empty, beneath and above. Two mirrors cracked, reflecting shame, chasing validation instead of names. Porn is the problem, it sells a fake cure, turns humans to products, makes touch feel impure. We thought we were free, but we're slaves in disguise, scrolling through bodies with dead in our eyes. This ain't just a screen, it's a spiritual war. Porn is the problem, and we can't ignore. I want more than a moan behind a glassy screen. I want covenant, not dopamine. She ain't here for my escape. She's the temple, not the bait. Porn is the problem, but truth is the light. I'm learning to see her with heaven in sight. I'm laying down idols, I'm turning from shame. And love don't come cheap, it comes with a name. I ain't cured, but I'm done with the game. Porn is the problem, and I'm not the same. I used to worship lust. Now I'm learning how to love.